Hey everybody, Tony Mandil here from Anatomy FX, and I'm back with another in my series of homegrown special effects videos. I'm shooting this series of supplementary videos for a live demonstration that I'm going to be doing in just a few weeks at Jackson Liberty High School in New Jersey. The purpose of these videos is to showcase how you can do some simple special effects for your home movies, for your low to no budget movies, things like cutting your actors with prop knives, slashing throats, doing gunshots. Things that you can do safely and effectively and very economically, and you get just as good results as you would on larger budget productions. Today we're going to be covering how to do gunshots, traditionally called squibs or bullet hits on your actor's body. Now, in the past, these have been done with explosive devices. Early on in my career, I did a few of them, and they're not fun to do. They're not particularly safe, and if you're working on a film that's got production insurance, it really drives up the cost of your insurance. Today we're going to learn how to do them using compressed air. That's very economic and very safe, and you get fantastic results. So let's jump right into what we need to build this rig to start shooting some actors. Now, the most important thing for doing a type of gunshot we're talking about is we want to deliver our blood with a lot of force to get a really great splatter effect, whether that's on a wall behind an actor or something that's coming off the front of the actor if they got shot in the front. The important thing is, however you set up your shot, the more pressure that you have, the bigger splatter you're going to get and the better your effect is going to look. And the way we do that with compressed air, and we do it cheaply and safely, is with these bicycle tire inflators. These are inflators that you can buy off eBay for about $15, and they use a little canister of CO2 that's got some threads on it. And you unscrew the inflator, put the canister of CO2 in, screw the top on, it's going to puncture the top, and then it's got a little trigger here. So if you needed to inflate a tire on your bike, if you were out for a ride and there's no air pump around, the whole purpose of these is you carry these with you so you're not stuck. We're going to use them as a compressed air source for delivering a big blood splatter. This is a really simple modification, and it's only going to take a few minutes to set up your compressed air rig. So it's going to look like this. You're going to have your bike tire inflator with an attachment that we're going to put on it, running to some vinyl hose that you can attach to the blood packet that's going to be on your actor, which will be the next step. But first, we're going to take our bicycle tire inflator, which, as I said, you can purchase these on eBay for about $15, and I'm going to provide that information in the video. And we're going to put a different attachment on it, and we get these from McMaster-Carr, and I'm also going to provide that link as well. So this is a Schrader valve. A Schrader valve is the type of valve that you would see on a bicycle tire or a car tire, the little stem that you use to inflate that tire. So this is a threaded Schrader valve on one end, and it's got these barb attachments on the other end, and these barb attachments are good for attaching our vinyl hose to. The Schrader valve is going to thread right into your bike tire inflator. So this is meant to screw right onto your bicycle tire. So this Schrader valve screws right onto your bike tire inflator. And now you can attach your vinyl hose to it that you'll ultimately attach to whatever your actor is going to be wearing for your big blood splatter effect. So now that we've attached our Schrader valve with our barbed end onto our bike tire inflator, the next thing we're going to do is just attach a little bit of vinyl hose to it, and then we're going to leave it uncut for now, and we can go ahead and trim it when we're ready to rig up this effect and see if it actually works. So I've got some vinyl tubing here. I believe it's about 3/8 inches, and we're just going to heat the end with a heat gun, or you can use a lighter to soften it up. That way we can press it right onto the barb, and then after it cools, it's going to be a nice tight seal. It's not going anywhere. There we go. So that's on there, and we're just going to leave it attached to this coil of hose for now. And then when we go ahead and rig up our effect to test it to make sure it actually works, then we'll go ahead and trim the length of our hose that we need. The next thing we need to talk about are the different devices that you can put on your actor to hold the blood that's going to be blast out for your gunshot effect. That all depends on the size of the effect you want, if you're filming your actor getting shot in the front or the back, or possibly both, you know, how much blood you want to see. So there's a couple of different devices we have here, and we're going to learn how to build these. The first would be good for an entrance wound, if you're seeing the bullet go into your actor. So it's made out of heat shrink tubing. Heat shrink tubing is generally something you would wrap electrical wires in and then heat it with a heat gun or a lighter, and it actually shrinks around those wires and keeps everything contained. In this instance, it's a good flat tubing that would fit under a costume in the front part of your actor that's facing the camera, and it's not really going to be bulky, and it's good for holding a small amount of blood for a tiny little entrance wound. You can see on this one that's been built, it's a flat piece of tubing that's been sealed on the top end. The bottom end has a little barb connector that we can attach our air hose to, and there's a tiny little hole cut in the front that we can fill with just a small amount of blood. Put under the costume, cut a tiny little hole in the costume, trigger our rig, and you're just going to get a small amount of blood and a hole in your costume that's going to look like an entrance wound. We also have a larger piece of tubing that's good for an exit wound. It holds more blood, and it's got a larger hole cut in it. Again, we have a barb on the bottom, and it's been sealed on the top, and this is good for putting on the back of your actor, facing away from the camera. You can fill it with a much larger quantity of blood, and when you trigger your effect, that blood is going to shoot up and out this way. So if your actor's standing in front of a wall, you should get a nice big blood splatter against the wall. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about how to build these. So the first thing we're going to do is create a device for your entrance wound. You don't need a lot of blood, and it should be something that's going to be small and flat and lay underneath the costuming and not be very noticeable. As I said earlier, we like to use heat shrink tubing for this. This is a plastic tubing that you would normally wrap around a bundle of electrical cables, heat it with a lighter or a heat gun, and it's going to shrink and keep all of those cables bundled together. In this instance, it's perfect for doing a flat, unobtrusive entrance wound. So we're going to start out by taking a lighter or a heat gun, and we're going to heat the end of this tube. And then pinch it closed with a pair of pliers. And that's going to melt it together and create a nice seal. So that's already cooled off, and it's a nice tight seal. So we're going to cut a small section of this, however much we think we need to fit underneath our costuming. And then we are going to take a plastic barb. So this is going to connect to our vinyl tubing for our CO2 delivery system. And this is going to be permanently adhered inside of our heat shrink tubing. So we can just slide one end of our plastic barb right in there and hit it with our heat gun. To seal it around our plastic barb. So now we've got a nice airtight seal, and it's a nice flat, unobtrusive squib that we can put underneath the front of our actor's clothing, and it's not going to be really big and bulbous. So now all we need to do is figure out where our entrance wound is going to go. So we're going to start very carefully with the tip of an X-Acto knife and get our hole started. And then take a small pair of scissors and cut a tiny hole in one side of it. So now we have a nice airtight seal on the end where we melted the plastic together. We have a nice airtight seal on the bottom with our barb connector that'll connect to our tubing for our CO2. And there's a nice little entrance wound hole cut right in the surface of it. So what we'll end up doing when we rig our actor is we'll use a little bit of spray glue, spray this to the inside of the actor's shirt, pre-cut a small hole, inject a small amount of blood in here, and then when we trigger our CO2 effect, we're going to be able to blow open the hole in the shirt and we'll get a small amount of blood for our entrance wound. Nice and simple. So the next part we're going to build a larger tube for our exit wound. We want something that holds a lot more blood, that's going to be able to provide a nice big splatter for our exit wound. So hopefully your actor's up against a nice background, so when they get shot, you'll see a nice big blood splatter. So here we've got a wider piece of tubing, and it's essentially the same concept. One end is sealed, the other end has a barb connector that you can connect to your tubing for your CO2 device, with a hole cut in it for your exit wound. So we've got a fresh piece of wider tubing cut right here. Now when you buy this stuff from a hardware store, it comes in a coil, so it's going to want to curve a little bit, so sometimes you just have to hit it with a heat gun and straighten it out. So we've straightened out this piece of hose a little bit, and the next step is going to be to block one end up and then add our barbed connector to the other end. I don't have a brass plug or a Teflon plug that's going to fit, but you can just block up one end of it with some hot glue.
It's probably going to take a couple of passes because the glue is so hot, so put a little bit of glue in the hose and then let it cool, and then put a little bit more in until you've completely blocked up one end of the hose and it's a nice tight seal. Now the other end of the hose is going to get your brass connector that's got your threads on one end and your barb connector on the other that'll ultimately connect to your CO2 device. So we're going to take our heat gun and heat up that end of the hose just a little bit, make it a little bit softer for our brass connector to be able to fit in there. So now our brass connector is going to fit right in, and it's going to be a nice tight seal. And then once that hose cools, which will be pretty quickly, that connector is not going anywhere. So we've got the brass connector with the barb on one end, and we've got our seal with our hot glue on the other end, and all that's left to do is cut a hole for our exit wound with an X-Acto.
Okay, I promised you guys this was going to be a really easy build, and it was. We've assembled our CO2 bike tire inflator as our delivery system. We've assembled a little piece of tubing for our exit wound, and we've assembled our little piece of heat shrink tubing as our entrance wound. So before we go any further, I just want to go ahead and test this and make sure we're getting the air pressure that we want out of this. So we're going to go ahead and on my whiteboard back here, do a little bit of a test with our exit wound tube. So to start this, before we fill this with blood, if we were to fill this with blood right now, because it's got the little barb connector at the end, the blood would just continue to flow out of here and down into the tube that's going to connect to the CO2 inflator. And we don't want that. So what I normally do is I'll just plug up the end of the barb connector with a little bit of vegetable shortening. It's going to seal the end of that hose, but it's not going to obstruct our CO2 from flowing through. And the reason I use vegetable shortening as opposed to something like Vaseline is it's got a higher melting point. So if you're working outside on a really hot day, there's less chance of this liquefying than there is Vaseline. So we've got our barb connector blocked up with a little bit of vegetable shortening, and we've got our bike tire inflator with a small piece of hose on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect this end of the hose to our exit wound. I've got a 16-gram CO2 cartridge here. Now to load this into your bike tire inflator, you're going to start threading it into the cap just a little bit, not enough to puncture it. You're just going to get it threaded in there. Then you're going to put the body of your bike tire inflator on, thread it, and then you're going to twist the whole thing until you hear it puncture and hiss. Now that's good to go. The CO2 canister has been punctured, and as soon as I pull that trigger, we should get a good blast of pressure. We're going to fill our exit wound with a little bit of blood, or a lot, depending on how much you want your test to, how effective you want your test to be. And we've got a decent amount of blood in there. So we've got our exit wound, and you can tell the blood isn't backflowing into the tube because that vegetable shortening is in there. And we've got a short piece of hose connected to our inflator, and we've got a nice clean board behind us. So here we go. We're going to give this a big test now with 3, 2, 1. And that's a successful test. Now that we know everything works, I want to go ahead and build one more piece of rigging, and that's in case we want to do a really big splattery headshot exit wound. Say you're filming a zombie film or something like that, and you want to see a really big dramatic headshot with a lot of like chunks and brains and viscera. So we want an exit wound tube that's going to hold even more material. So the next thing we're going to build is this piece of PVC that's got a little bit of a curvature on it and a cap with a threaded barb connector going into it. So it's essentially the same effect as our exit wound, except this is going to hold even more material, and it'll get rigged up behind our actor's head so they can do a really big splattery headshot finale. We're going to start with taking a piece of PVC, and we're going to heat it with a heat gun and bend it. Now, if you just try to bend PVC after it's been heated, all you're going to do is put a kink in it, and it's really not going to work out. So to get that kind of curvature, after we heat it, we need to take a sturdy piece of hose, and this is the same hose that we used to make our original exit wound in, and we're going to put that down inside of our PVC after it's been heated, and then slowly pull it and bend it, and that's going to get that slight curve without kinking our PVC. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we'll put this whole thing together very quickly. And here we go. We've got a nice, gentle curve for our headshot exit wound. Now, the first time I tried this, I actually did a straight piece of PVC with a 90-degree elbow joint on the end of it. And I didn't love the tests that were happening with that effect because the blood, as it was traveling up the pipe, was hitting that hard right angle, and it was actually slowing down before it exited. So we were getting a good effect, but not the big splatter that I wanted, and you can tell from these previous tests. So I took this back to the drawing board, realized what the issue was with the momentum hitting that 90-degree angle, and decided to cut off that elbow joint, heat the pipe, and do this slight curvature instead, and it gave us a much better effect because the blood and the brains and whatever else we were putting in here wasn't hitting that hard 90-degree stop before it's exiting. It's just got a nice gentle slope, so we get more pressure and a bigger splatter. So we're just going to trim this down a little bit. This is the first one that I made, and we're just going to trim this pipe down to come close to matching that. And we've got a PVC cap that's going to go on the bottom of this pipe that I've drilled in this instance, a 3/8 inch hole into the cap. And I'm going to thread this 3/8 inch threaded brass piece, again with our now very familiar barb connector on the end of it. So this should go right in here pretty snugly, because the hole we drilled was 3/8 and our connector is 3/8 threaded. So it should go in there and be a nice tight fit without us needing to glue it in. And of course now it's going to make a liar out of me because I'm on camera and it's not going in straight. Okay, there we go. So we got our 3/8 inch threaded connector in the end of our PVC cap. And you can use regular PVC cement to glue this to the bottom of our pipe, but I don't have any right now, so I'm just going to use some JB Weld, which you've seen me use before. That's a 1-to-1 mix. And we're just going to put a little bit on the end of our pipe. And that cap's going to fit right on there. So in about 5 minutes, once this JB Weld cures, this is going to be good to go for our test. So the next thing we're going to do is show you how to rig this up to an actor for a nice big splattery exit wound.
Recording.
So the next thing we're going to do is a gunshot. We're going to do an entrance wound in his front and an exit in the back. And the way I prep the exit is I use these back braces with these Velcro pads glued all across the back. And then we can take our exit wound that also has Velcro and we can position it pretty much anywhere in his back depending on how many Velcro pads we have. So this goes on really easily for the exit wound, and then we know the entrance is going to be kind of like off to this side on his torso here. So when I prep the shirt, I know where the entrance wound is going to be, and then this is going to be our exit. So it's going to be like a through and through, but this goes on and off really quickly and easily, and the whole thing is about keeping our actors as comfortable as possible during the setup process so they're not walking around with a lot of rigging on them. So I'm going to go ahead and prep the shirt with the entrance wound, and then we'll get him all dressed up to get this effect going. Yeah, so we know our entrance wound is going to be kind of right underneath the pocket right here, and we have our little entrance wound squib, which is a flat heat shrink tubing. So what I'm going to do is just give this a little dusting of some spray adhesive, and I'm going to tack it right down on the inside of the shirt. Hopefully it tacks down. Okay, so we've got our little entrance wound squib glued to the inside of the costume, and you can see the hole right there, and it's not going to be a big deal because, again, editorially, go ahead and put this costume on you. You can get your, it's a little small. All right. So now I'm going to button it. No, not yet. I'm going to take the exit and I'm going to place it sort of like in line with where the entrance is going to be underneath the costume. So right about here. And we're going to make sure that's Velcroed down in as many places as we can get. Now I'm going to cut the back of the costume so our exit wound is exposed. Go. And if you want to, too, you could actually tape around it, but I don't think it'll be necessary in this case. I'm just going to cut a little extra. There we go. So our exit squib is exposed, so we should get a nice big splatter up against our backdrop. Now, like I said in the build tutorial, to block up these squibs so the blood doesn't backflow into the air tubing, I use a little bit of vegetable shortening. And vegetable shortening goes in the barb connector, and that's going to stop the blood from flowing once we load it all the way back down into the air hose. So it'll stay within the squib. And I like to use vegetable shortening over petroleum jelly because it's got a higher melting point. So if you're working outside on a hot day, it's got less chance of liquefying. And I'm gonna block up that barb connector with some vegetable shortening as well. And hopefully that's good enough. Put my glasses on. And you can go ahead and start buttoning that. I'm going to reach under and connect this air hose to that barb connector right there. So that air hose is connected to our entrance squib. We're going to try and twist that. There we go. And we might have to clip it somewhere so it doesn't get a little twist on it. So
Recording.
we're just going to heat that tube up a little bit with a lighter to get it malleable, that's a tough word, enough to get on the end of our barb connector, right here between the shirts. Come on, there we go. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our squib rigged up to the back for the exit wound. We've got our vegetable shortening plugging up the connector here, so when we fill that with blood, theoretically, it should stay within this tube and not backflow all the way. And same thing for the front. So we've got this tiny little irrigation syringe, and we're going to try and very carefully get this in the hole of our entrance wound squib. JD, could you grab me those little cuticle scissors, the tiny scissors? Thank you, and hold that syringe actually. I want to get this hole opened up. If I can find it. All right, so we've got our entrance wound, and we're using this irrigation syringe to add just a small amount of blood to it. Oh, too much. All right. Well, ideally it would have been a small amount of blood, but this is just a demo, so hopefully it'll work out. And can I have the larger syringe? And I'm going to do the same thing in the back, which I don't know if you... There we go. I'm going to use the larger syringe and fill a larger amount of blood into that exit wound. Hopefully we get a nice juicy splatter. All right, larger syringe. And now... So what's going to happen is after we rig this up, I'm going to give a countdown, 3, 2, 1, shoot. You don't actually have to fall, and you don't even actually have to act that much. Just give like a little bit of a jerk when I say shoot. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see a nice big splatter on the ground behind you. You wanna do this?
It's a lot of pressure.
All right, it is a lot of pressure. Well, we're going to be down here, so we're going to be. Maybe shoot from that? No, that's not going to work because we want to see the entrance splatter. Yeah. So come over right on this corner, and then hopefully I'll move over to this side. And then, yeah.
That should give you both front and back.
I'm trying to...
Wait a second. Now pre-thread it into the cap.
Without cracking it?
Without cracking it.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. All right, get the body in there. And then you can go ahead and crack it whenever you're ready. Oh, mine's not cracked. Oh, there we go.
Mine's not threading all the way up.
Yeah, they don't thread all the way up, but is it cracked?
I think it. There it is.
All right. Hopefully mine is cracked.
I think mine is.
All right.
Does this have a safety on it?
Safety should be down, hopefully. Let me see.
I think it's. Is it okay?
I think it's going to be all right.
Okay.
Here, you want to see if we can time this together?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do 3, 2, 1, shoot. So we're going to shoot, and you're just going to give a little bit of a jerk when I say shoot. Everybody filming? Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. Fingers crossed, everybody. 3, 2, 1, shoot.
Nice.
We get the front too?
Yeah. It's sprayed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop.
We've got our PVC pipe that we're going to block up the barb connector with a little bit of that lovely vegetable shortening. And keep all of our chunky gore from backflowing into the air hose. And I'm going to go ahead and connect the air hose. And then I'm going to attempt very carefully to dump as much of this goo. Hopefully we get some of the chunks in there. Oh, there's a nice chunk. Get some banana in there. That's our brains. All right. And now our victim can step into the kill zone here. Attach our PVC right to the Velcro. Our PVC is already loaded with all of our gore, and it's already attached to our CO2 device. So if you could please spin your back towards the exit, and if camera could come around here so it's not seeing the rig. Puncture our CO2 and get ready to do this effect. So it's going to be the same thing as our gunshot. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, fire, and then just jerk your head back as if you've been shot right in the head. Okay. And hopefully we get a nice splattery effect. Could somebody please run slow motion?
Yes, I can do that.
On this. Let me know when all the cameras are rolling.
I'm good.
Everybody rolling? Mm-hmm. Speed? Okay, here we go. No? 3, 2, 1, fire. And we didn't get as big a splatter as we wanted, but it's still pretty good. I think once a gunshot effect is dropped into that, it's going to work out really well. So that's it. I think a little bit more of a clean backdrop. All right, and let me know when everybody's rolling.
All right, got it.
Everybody's rolling? All right, so that looked good, but we're gonna do one more time and see if we can get a bigger splatter. So we've eliminated the slime and all the chunks and see if just the blood flow alone gives us a bigger splatter exit wound that we're looking for. So everything's reloaded with just blood. I've got a fresh CO2 canister in here. And we're gonna go ahead for a take 2 on our headshot. All right, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, fire. And that's it. That still looks pretty good.
The little dance.